You've heard my name before. Don't deny it. It lingers in the back of your mind, burned there by the weight of my reputation and the endless repetition of my story. Don't follow? Allow me to enlighten you. I'm one of the most infamous order, composed of a malicious sort of ne'er-do-wells. Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jigsaw, for example. And after all, why do you think this was uploaded after Halloween? You really think I'd let the juiciest hunting day of the year go unacknowledged, uncelebrated, relegated to the bargain bin of holidays? Of course not. And do spare me the rumors you heard of my drunken debauchery, for they were vastly overstated. I would do no such thing, for I am a legendary killer, and stalking this earth alone simply wasn't enough for me. I have achieved singularity, and now I prowl the irradiated wastes in search of new victims. So, can you beat Fallout New Vegas as Jason Voorhees? Let's go over the rules. They are quite simple. 1. I am restricted to only using weapons that Jason has used to kill people in the Jason Voorhees movies, and a civilian jumpsuit. I would have gone with a lobotomite jumpsuit as it's a darker color, but I didn't know it at the time, so a civilian jumpsuit it is. 2. The weapons I can use are machetes, knives, the occasional throwing spear. Anything that you've seen Jason kill with aside from something too blatantly OP, like the chainsaw for example. Someone in the stream told me that at one point Jason used a pistol. I didn't fact check that, but I also didn't feel like that fit the spirit of the challenge, so that was a no-go anyway. Now, picture Jason patiently waiting in the line at the grocery store. Can't do it, neither could I, so I didn't allow myself to buy from merchants either. That's really it for the rules. It's also set to very hard hardcore mode. You ready? Let's go. I woke up from the dreaded Doc Mitchell's table and named myself Jason Voorhees, obviously. From there, I didn't spend too much time working on my appearance. I just worked on making myself as bald as I could be, since we wouldn't see much of me from behind my iconic hockey mask. I got up from the table and went to the vigor tester. There wasn't really a certain build I was going for, so here are my special stats. And then, for once in my life, I actually decided to accept therapy, and I answered Doc Mitchell's questions as appropriately as a serial killer could. Then I chose my tag skills. I chose melee weapons, survival, and unarmed, and for my traits, I chose heavy-handed and skilled. Now that I had fully materialized in the world, it was time for the entity to spawn in the items I'd need, like my jumpsuit and my mask. I also increased my size to 1.1 so I'd be slightly taller and faster than everyone, since I am a succulent alpha male, and that's how horror movies work. Once I left Doc Mitchell's house, I went back inside for my first target, Doc Mitchell himself. Since you already start the game with a broad machete if you have some of the DLCs, I was already set in the weapons department, so I went to the kitchen where Doc Mitchell was, and I stabbed him as many times as the game would allow me. It was glorious. From there, I had only one burning desire: murder. So I proceeded to go around Goodsprings and lay waste to all of the people I could reasonably find. Easy Pete, Sunny Smiles, Cheyenne, and a few random nameless Goodsprings settlers. I also made sure to stop in at the gas station and put Ringo out of his misery, and so from there, I left Goodsprings as the ghost town it was. When I was far enough away from Goodsprings to be able to change my stats, I did. I wanted to actually max out my strength instead of leaving it on 9. That was about all I wanted to change, and so I proceeded onward into the unknown. On the way to Prim, I got the chance to kill some powder gangers as usual, but they deserved it, because of course they did. And then, as he usually does, Victor popped out of nowhere, and I couldn't leave him wandering the wasteland, now could I? When I arrived at the outskirts of Prim, I was greeted by an NCR soldier, who I proceeded to stab multiple times. I would show remorse, but I am physically incapable of it. Once the troopers were dead, I leveled up to 2, and I put all of my points into melee weapons, then picked Lady Killer as my perk. Now that the soldier was dead, I figured I had to kill the rest of them. After all, it just wasn't fair to our friend who was formerly above the daisies himself. I went into the NCR tents and attempted to reunite the squad in the afterlife. I died a few times, but after several attempts, finally success. Now they'll be together forever. Once all of the troopers lay dead, I decided to go to the Bison Steve and take care of the convicts. Since the civilian jumpsuit didn't have any damage threshold, I kept getting killed. How dreadfully inconvenient for me. Though the convicts put up a hell of a fight, in the end, I killed the lot because I am Jason, and I have the power of quick save on my side. Once I was back outside, I ventured into the Vicky and Vance casino to attempt to talk to some of the people, but they killed me on sight. I can't imagine why, a good upstanding citizen such as myself. No matter. Since I couldn't kill the residents just now, I decided to head to Nipton and kill the one and only Oliver Swanick. Did you really think I was going to let him live? In a video about a serial killer, in which I am the star, please, and to think you watch my videos. Soon I was face to face with Vulpes Inculta. He spoke my language and understood the siren song of unmitigated bloodshed. I agreed to inform the NCR about the Legion's presence in the Mojave, not only for easy experience, but because I was going to work with the Legion this time around for the first time ever. After all, we had something in common, a shared desire to see the populace crushed under our heels. Since I knew I wasn't ready to take over the Mojave outpost, I decided to go back to it at a later time when I had better equipment and proceeded to go through the valley to Novak. The valley was full of bighorners as usual, but I couldn't kill them due to my lack of weaponry. I did get to kill a few of the Viper gunslingers though. They died as they were born, screaming and covered in blood. Once I was through the valley, I ran into a couple of Legion members and proceeded to steal some machetes so I could fix my broad machete. They were none the wiser. Since there's usually a Legion attack on a caravan once you get past the valley, I decided to wait for the Legion to ambush them so I could loot their corpses when they were dead for more machetes. The circle of life, and when the dust settled, I finished off what remained of the mercenaries. The rest of the walk to Novak was quiet, until I actually hit the town, and the little voice in the back of my head pressured me into my next murder spree. It was very short-lived though, as some of the residents there were far more powerful than I, mainly the mercenaries that follow around Dr. Ada Strauss. Just what are they feeding these people? It's unreal. Since I couldn't do anything in Novak at the time being, I decided to just keep moving forward towards the strip. I ran into some more Viper gang members and got killed a few times before I finally prevailed. After that, I leveled up to 4 and put all of my points into melee weapons again, and picked a Travel Light as my perk so I could move 10% faster in my jumpsuit. Further along the road, I ran into the Lonesome Drifter, and since he was useless to me, I put him out of his misery as well. I mean, I assume he was miserable. Come on, don't look at me that way. He's sleeping beneath a billboard in the middle of the Mojave. That is a reasonable assumption. After the short fight with the Lonesome Drifter, I realized that this challenge would be nearly impossible without extra damage threshold. It also didn't make sense that I, Jason Voorhees, would consistently die from basic attacks. Haven't you seen my movies? I am a veritable brick wall. So, I decided to give myself 10 extra damage threshold through console commands. And if you don't like that, well, you're just gonna have to deal with it. It's my world, you're just living in it. Before I made it to the 188 trading post, I took a detour to Boulder City to deal with the Great Khans. The voices were uncharacteristically quiet today. I had a very civil chat with Lieutenant Monroe, and I agreed to help him kill some of the Great Khans for easy experience. When I entered the building that Jessup was in, instead of talking through his dialogue like I would, I just decided to kill him on the spot. I am nothing if not consistent. With the extra 10 damage threshold that I had, the fight was much easier and felt more proper for a man who technically can't die. When I left the building, I ran and hid as usual so the NCR could do their job. I didn't kill any of them here considering they were heavily armed and I still only had a machete. It was the same thing at the 188 trading post, though after I left the 188 trading post, I ran into Victor again, who I decided to put down once more, the face-stealing witch that he was. From there, the walk to Freeside was eerily quiet, and I was alone with my thoughts. Unfortunately, my time there was brief since I lacked the caps, science skill, or combat supremacy to actually make it into the strip. So when in doubt, trespass. I left Freeside and made my way to Camp McCarran to take the monorail to the strip. The guards in front of the monorail refused to change shift. Somebody clearly wanted that sweet, sweet overtime pay. So I just walked past them and got on the monorail and made my way into the strip hassle-free, since the NCR doesn't do anything about it when you get there anyways. As soon as I arrived, Victor stopped me and asked me to go to the Lucky 38. I immediately questioned him as to how he was alive for a third time, and then refused to go, nor elaborate as to why. Instead, I went to the Tops to settle a score with that slippery bastard Benny. The chairman at the front of the casino put up a hell of a fight, and when they were all dead, I decided to leave the casino momentarily to level up. I was now at level 6, and I was able to max out my melee weapons. I picked toughness as my perk for extra damage threshold. Once I was done, I went back into the Tops and attempted to kill Benny a few times before I realized that wasn't going to happen. You see, at this point in the challenge, I was running incredibly low on healing supplies, so I went back to Prim and looted all of their houses for food. I do what I please, and this is what pleased me. Once I thought I had enough, I went back to the Tops and tried to take care of Benny once again. After a few failed attempts of going in head-on, I decided to attempt to spear him from a distance since apparently I, Jason, used a spear in one of my movies. After a dose of steady and a few tries, I ended up one-shotting him, then ran down to his body, looted it, and fled as fast as my legs could carry me. Once I was back outside, I was contacted by Vulpes Inculta himself, and I was summoned to the fort to speak to Caesar. I was eager to meet another psycho-megalomaniac like myself, so I agreed and made my way there post-haste. This was, once again, an incredibly quiet walk with not much happening in the way of fighting. Perhaps people heard I was coming. When I arrived at Cottonwood Cove, I dallied a while and stole some machetes from the legionaries and looted their footlockers for good measure. Once I was ready, I went to the fort and enjoyed a brief conversation with Caesar. He informed me that he wanted my help. Of course he did. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. There was a bunker belonging to Mr. House in the fort, and I was to take the platinum chip and destroy whatever's down there. Fine by me. To the weather station I went, where I got back my weapons, and when I made my way down into the depths, to my surprise, I was greeted by none other than Mr. House himself, who I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet this playthrough as a result of refusing his earlier offer. He was not pleased. He politely asked me to not destroy his stuff, but once again, I refused. The Protectrons were not the problem here. It was the turrets. They did much more damage than the Protectrons did, and shot far more rapidly as well. When I arrived at the power regulators, I wasn't able to destroy them with a normal melee weapon, though mercifully I was able to destroy them with throwing spears, of which I had one. So, I trekked back outside and looked around the camp for someone to, liberate. Once I had a few in my possession, it was as easy as going back into the station and blowing up the power regulators. To say the least, Mr. House was not happy, but Kaiser was, and that's all that mattered, and he already had another quest lined up for me. I was to kill somebody whose last name rhymes with Blouse. Did you guess, Mr. House? Congratulations! There is no prize, but you can officially call yourself a winner. There was no rush to kill our esteemed fellow sociopath, so I went on a weapon run. The first stop was Wolfhorn Ranch for a unique cleaver known as Chopper. From there I went to Nelson to start another Legion quest. Surely Kaiser will understand. Dead Sea, the questmaster prompted me to go to Camp Forlorn Hope and kill the NCR soldiers located there. As I approached, I realized I had a far more pressing problem: my ever-increasing rad count. Since buying Radaway was prohibited and finding Radaway in the race was virtually impossible, I was forced to use Fiery Purgative, a mixture of jalapenos, vodka, and white horse nettle.
Jesus Christ, what's that supposed to do?
Anyway, getting some of the ingredients such as jalapenos required me to go out to the dry lakes, since that's where most jalapenos grew. But the real kicker, for some reason, was the white horse nettle, an otherwise common plant, allegedly, but I couldn't find hardly any of it. In my blind rage, I decided to proceed onward to Camp Forlorn Hope and brutally murdered the NCR residing there. Serves them right for existing. None of them put up too much of a fight, and Chopper was a very efficient weapon. Once all lay dead, I went back to Dead Sea and was awarded a unique machete called Liberator, which was the main weapon I used for the rest of the run. With my new toy in hand, I decided to do Vulpus's quest and proceed directly to the Vault 21 hotel to kill some Emeritus who were bothering Martina Grossbeck. He was pleased with my work and rewarded me with a handsome amount of experience, then immediately sent me to check on Captain Ronald Curtis, an undercover Legion spy at Camp McCarran. Sadly, to be able to help Captain Curtis, I had to talk to Colonel Shu, and since I was vilified by the NCR, there was nothing I could do here. Yet. I made my way to Vault 3 to take my frustrations out on a handful of fiends there. Serves them right for existing too. With my urges sated, I realized the time had come to take care of Mr. House. It was much easier than usual since the Securitrons weren't updated yet. I took my time looting the rest of the Lucky 38 for all of its Sunset Sarsaparilla, Nuka-Cola, and vodka. I also made sure to bug the sweets for the followers of the Apocalypse for that juicy, delicious, easy experience. But the voices, they nagged at me in my ear, and so I went back to the fort and entered the arena. All of the fights were easy, including Ranger Stella at the end, who I just pummeled around with my machete. With my work done, I returned to Kaiser, and he trusted me with another quest. I was to befriend the boomers, or eliminate them if I couldn't, so it was off to Nellis Air Force Base. Once again, the walk there was very quiet. I can't imagine why nobody wants to face me. I was stopped by George before I could actually make my way into the bombardment zone, and I killed him because, of course I did. Did you really think I was gonna let him live? At least he leveled me up to 10. I put all of my points into medicine and picked the second level of toughness for even more damage threshold. I will also note that when I hit level 8 prior to this, I picked the Super Slant perk so all of my melee weapons have a chance to knock down my target. By now, I was starting to get good at avoiding the bombardment from the boomers and made my way to the front gate easily. Now, you'd think Jason would just up and kill the boomers, but you would be wrong. I'm working for Kaiser, so I decided against it for the time being, but they were on thin ice. Real thin ice. Now, you know the drill. Quest time. The first one I did was learning the history of the boomers from that snot-nosed kid. Quest my ass. I still don't understand why they call it that. Finally, I rounded it out with Loyal's quest, and tried to help fix the solar arrays, but to do that I'd have to get the parts from Helios 1. Now surprisingly, when I arrived at Helios, the NCR didn't attack me. I wonder why. And I was allowed to enter through the side door and make my way outside to the parts. Once I had them, I went back to the boomers, fixed their arrays, and talked to Loyal. And just like that, I've gained enough of the Boomer's trust to learn about the lady in the water. You think that Jason would be terrified of water. Camp Crystal Lake, anyone? But on the contrary, he is a fantastic swimmer. So getting the bomber to the surface of the water was easy as pie. With that done, I returned to Loyal, finished the quest, and got the Boomers to side with Kaisar. I was also allowed to grab the howitzer firing mechanism from the gun cabinet and bring it to Lucius at the fort. But before that, I was contacted by a member of the Frumentari and told the location of the Legion's secret stash, and so I went there post-haste. When I returned to Kaisar with the good news that the Boomers were on his side, he gave me yet another quest, to recruit the White Glove Society over to Kaisar's Legion. But before I could contend with that, my ongoing problem had reached its breaking point: critical radiation poisoning. So I went back to Goodsprings and spent an unnecessary amount of time positioning Easy Pete's body on a chair with his head in his lap, as one does. Then I went to the saloon and murdered Trudy and Joe Cobb. I refused to explain myself and left, instead looking around for jalapeno peppers and white horse nettle. The white horse nettle had finally stopped being a thorn in my side, and I found more than enough. The jalapenos, on the other hand, they weren't going to come quietly. They were mostly found in both of the dry lakes, and those lakes were filled with ants. Try to get that image out of your head. I had but a few doses of fiery purgative, and as I set off on my search, I realized I was missing one key ingredient: vodka. Since vodka wasn't something you could pick like a plant, I decided to go check Prim out to see if I could find any vodka in the Vicky and Vance casino, and to do a little bit of murdering. Remember me, guys? Apparently they did, since the townsfolk didn't put up much of a fight at all, but sadly, there was no vodka. After the fight at Prim, my machete was pretty well near broken, so I had to travel back to Cottonwood Cove and ship of Theseus my machete together from the cobbled remains of stolen blades lifted from the Legion's storage shed. Once I was done, I fast-traveled to Nipton and made my way towards the Mojave outpost. When I arrived there, I made sure to talk to Sergeant Kilborn and Ghost for a little experience, and then I decided to slaughter the lot. Surely you understand. The NCR here put up quite a bit of a fight. It was messy and inconvenient, but in the end, they were no match for Jason and his trusty machete. I also hit level 12 here and put all of my points into repair, and ultimately picked the Unstoppable Force perk so I could break through an enemy's block with ease. I also got the chance to loot some food for healing and some vodka for fiery purgative. With my brutal murder spree done, I went back to Goodsprings, and I was able to make 6 fiery purgatives from the vodka I got at Mojave Outpost. With my rads now under control, I felt more empowered than ever to follow my heart, and my heart led me to Novak, where I carefully and precisely moved from house to house, murdering everyone I found. Once I dispatched everyone inside, I finished off the citizens walking outside, and that was that. No more Novak. Now that I got the murdering out of my system, it was time to continue with the main quest and visit the White Glove Society. Now, for some reason when I spoke to Mortimer, apparently I wasn't well known enough to do the job. I've only slaughtered hundreds of Mojave denizens so far, so I guess that's understandable. I didn't really know what to do next, and I didn't want to leave this quest unfinished, so I did a bit of research and figured out that one of the only ways to do this quest is to have a slightly negative karma in the strip. Whatever floats your boat, Mortimer. So I just went around the strip and pickpocketed a few people. With that done, I could finally start the quest. He wanted me to help bring cannibalism back to the White Glove Society. I was pretty down for that, but there was a complication. They kidnapped the wrong person to eat, Ted Gunderson, and I either had to convince the boy to leave quietly or kill him. I kinda wanted to kill him, but I didn't know if that would have any adverse effects down the line, so I stopped the quest for a moment in an attempt to get my speech up in order to make him leave. The first place I stopped was Boulder City. Sadly, when I'd finished killing Jessup way back when, most of the NCR left the area. If nothing else, I was able to go into the tavern and kill the owner for some easy experience, and to get some food and drink in the process. The next stop was the 188 Trading Post, mainly to take out the civs and NCR soldiers. I'm going to tell everyone right now, this is where I ran into one of the most problematic enemies in this run, the NCR Heavy Troopers. My god, even with my unique machete, it still took a few minutes of pummeling to bring just one down. Not to mention, once I was usually done killing an NCR Heavy Trooper, my machete was damn near broken. So I once again had to go to the fort and loot the footlockers there in an attempt to find some machetes. I made off with about 7 machetes, an acceptable haul. With my weapon fully repaired and some extras on backup, I decided it was time. The troops at Camp McCarran had breathed their last. This one was definitely a hassle. Named NCR troopers, normal NCR troopers, and just way too many of them to count to boot. I ended up having to hide in a tent for the majority of the time and wait for them to come to me, which ended up being the easiest way of dealing with them. When the killing was done, I was able to loot healing supplies from the medic tent, but I still had to take care of the troops inside. Here I tried to finish Captain Curtis's quest to blow up the monorail, but I couldn't actually do it as I couldn't enter the monorail. 10 out of 10. So I just started butchering everyone that I came into contact with, including the aforementioned undercover Captain Curtis, who I'll have you know attacked me first. I ran into some more NCR heavy troopers, and I guess the only good thing about killing them with my machete is that once they fall down from my perk, they practically just stay down, and I get to beat them senseless up against the wall, which is hilarious. There was also a whole nother area, but it was just more of the same. I left victorious, and the area would remain haunted by my victims' spirits for the rest of time. Speaking of more of the same, the next place I visited was Camp Golf, home of the NCR Rangers. Now, did I actually go into the Ranger headquarters? No. No, I didn't. You daft, I value my life, and you should too. That being said, I did kill all of the troopers located outside and looted every single tent in the surrounding area. I also killed the veteran Rangers guarding their HQ. With that taken care of, most of my weapons were now in considerable disrepair, and to my knowledge, I've already used most of the duct tape present in the Mojave to make repair kits prior to this. The only place I could think of to go back to was the Boomers and loot all of the toolboxes there. It ended up being a waste of time considering I only found one roll of duct tape. I stole it anyway. The literal, actual last roll of duct tape that the Boomers had in their base, and it's not like they can get it back being an isolated faction and all. They shall forever be duct tapeless. I moved on to Helios to see if I could find some duct tape, but there was none to be found in the areas that I could access, and I wasn't about to risk my neck for some silvery adhesive. I was about halfway to leveling up now, so I did my old tried and true tactic of murdering Bighorner and ants, and then more Bighorner and a few more ants, and, well, you get the drill. At this point, I was so low on weaponry that I was forced to use a kitchen knife. No, do not do this. It is not fun. Eventually, I had to trek back to Cottonwood Cove and steal some more machetes from the unsuspecting legionaries there. I use unsuspecting lightly here. Surely they must know that something is up, considering that every time I come to town, suddenly everyone is bereft of their swords. Amazing how that happens, isn't it? Once my machete was in decently good shape, I made the trip up towards Jacobstown and killed the rest of the Bighorner I needed to level up. I hit level 14 and put the majority of my points into sneak and a little into medicine. At this point, I had given up on using speech to take care of Ted Gunderson. My patience was wearing thin, and I wanted to progress the main quest as quickly as possible, so I relied on having my sneak close to 50 so I could use a La Phantoma and sneak my weapons in just to kill Gunderson. I also picked the Here and Now perk, putting my points into medicine. Now it was finally time to take care of the kid. To be honest, I'm not quite sure why I wanted to do it peacefully in the first place. I mean, I am Jason after all. With Ted dead, all I had to do was frame his dad, Heck Gunderson, which was not hard to do. And after that, it was as easy as talking with Mortimer, waiting a few hours, and finally completing the White Glove Society's quest. With that done, I could return to Kaiser once again and take on the next quest, eliminate the Brotherhood of Steel Mojave chapter. So, we've all been here before. Destroying the Brotherhood of Steel. Not an easy feat, especially with a machete, but I am Jason, and I had already decided prior to entering the bunker that I was going to blow them to Kingdom Come. I had my skill, all I needed was luck. Since I stood no chance of actually killing them in hand-to-hand combat, I rolled with the bomb collar on the neck treatment. Sure, I had to take a bit of time to kill Dobson, the good old NCR Ranger, but it was worth it in the long run. The Elder now trusted me, you fool, and I could steal the keycards I needed to start the self-destruct sequence, and with that, the Brotherhood was no more. I returned to Kaiser with the good news, and in turn received some bad news from him. He needed a medical procedure, and he decided that Jason was somehow the man for the job. This was not his finest idea, but what do you expect from a man with an intelligence of 4 and a brain tumor? Anyway, the only thing I needed to go grab for the procedure were some surgical tools from the New Vegas Medical Clinic. My medicine skill was basically high enough already. All I had to do was read today's physician, and I was able to fix Caesar's brain tumor. And Kaiser became the first person to not only survive a Jason Voorhees encounter, but to have his life saved by him as well. The final quest before the assault on Hoover Dam was to assassinate President Kimball. Before I could start working on taking out a head of state, I had to meet up with my contact, a member of the Frumentari. He gave me the details that I needed to carry out the job, and I was off to Hoover Dam. Surprisingly, when I showed up, none of the NCR attacked me on sight, so I made a beeline for the closet to grab the Ncr Engineer Jumpsuit, which I allowed myself to wear since it's literally the same thing as a civilian jumpsuit practically. What followed might be called out of character for me, and if you agree, know that I don't care. In the name of Kaiser, I grabbed a hunting rifle from an NCR ranger I killed and shot President Kimball. Now it was over. With the assassination complete, I could go back to Kaiser for the final mission, assaulting Hoover Dam. I was to meet up with Legate Lanius, but before that, I had to get prepared. I went to many places in the wasteland looking for food, healing supplies, and machetes, but the only place I could really find machetes was at the fort. Oh, the fort. You'd think they'd have wisened up after the first several hundred robberies, but apparently not. With the help of a stealth boy, I was able to acquire a lot of machetes. I mean, a lot. Somebody was definitely getting disciplined for that one, and it wasn't going to be me. I spoke to Kaiser for the last time, and made my way to the Legate's camp. After discussing a few combat strategies with the Legate, I was told that I was to kill General Oliver. No matter. I leveled up right after the conversation and put my points into medicine. The walk to the dam from the Legate's camp was a long one. Not hard at all in the slightest, since all they were sending at me at this point were normal NCR troopers. When I made it to the middle point, I was greeted by a veteran Decanus who clearly didn't know that I was the one single-handedly filching every last machete from under his men's noses. He asked me to take out some of the NCR snipers in the area, along with gaining access to a few Centurions who were stuck in the lower levels. Neither proved difficult, and I made my way toward the front of the dam. The interior was more of the same, killing pathetic NCR troopers in a few swings. Now's when the real issues began. I made it to General Lee Oliver, and we had a lovely chat, but when we were finished, I found myself greeted by several low-level NCR troopers. But they weren't the problem. The veteran ranger, armed with an anti-material rifle on a booby-trapped second floor, was. The key to this area, like many other areas, was to run as fast as I could and avoid getting shot. That's good advice for any situation, honestly. Write it down. Now, forgive me, but I lied to you just now. The real issue was on the third floor where General Oliver stood. Not because the general was hard to kill, he was an absolute pushover. Rather, the heavy troopers were a nightmare to deal with, and not to mention, there was a plethora of the bastards about, which made the fight even harder. I ended up having to take the fight to the first floor for a little bit more breathing room, and proceeded to spend nearly 30 minutes hacking at a bunch of armor-clad idiots. Occasionally, I could knock them down, or even knock the weapon out of their hand, and if I was fast enough, I could grab said weapon so they couldn't have it. Finders keepers! Now, this was a double-edged sword of sorts. On one hand, they wouldn't have a good weapon to attack me with, and in their blind desperation would often pick up a worse weapon, usually those dropped by a common trooper, like a service rifle. On the other hand, there were a few Great Khans who died in here, and the Great Khans do not fuck around. They came with riot shotguns. Put two and two together. This made my life an absolute hell. But in the end, I was victorious, because of course I was. I'm Jason Voorhees. Though I was worried about running out of machetes, I still managed to end every last life in the building. I walked out of the doors, and Legate Lanius greeted me with a tenuous, terrified respect. He said that the rest of the dam was now fully under the Legion's control, and thus I beat Fallout New Vegas as Jason Voorhees. So this challenge wasn't really anything special, it was just a melee-heavy, murder-heavy playthrough. And I feel a little bad that I didn't have it up in time for Halloween, but hey, what can you do? I do recommend trying a playthrough like this, not necessarily as Jason, but a melee-heavy murder playthrough. It was quite fun. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and like and subscribe, as that helps me out bunches. Also, take a look at some of the other challenges I've done. You'll probably enjoy those too. A shout out to my patrons, Riley Anderson, Jamie East, and Untamed Pineapple. Y'all are the best. Thank you to 6 weirdly intelligent rats in a trench coat for helping me write this script. It's amazing what you can do with operant conditioning and a rat-sized keyboard. And until next time, stay safe out there, and peace out.